I have a Totoro. To be fair, I showed you this back when I did the review for My Neighbor Totoro. And at the moment, I am now going to be doing some... I am going to rank the Studio Ghibli movies, since I have now watched them all the way through. I'm now going to rank them. Totoro. I was going to put him on the bed with Brenda, but I don't know if he would like that, or if she would like that, so we'll just put him off to the side. So, I will be ranking the Studio Ghiblis, all the ones that I reviewed. Now, in regard to the ranking system, I just have A, B, C, D, and F like I usually do. And I don't really intend to have anything in like D or F, simply because of the fact of like, I love the Studio Ghibli movies so much that there's like none of them I think that would fit into D or F. So I don't intend to have to put any in there. There's probably only going to be like one or two in C, and then the majority of them are going to be in like A or B. Now, to be clear, just because they're in C or so, that doesn't mean that they're a bad movie. It doesn't mean that they're not worthy of the Ghibli name. It's just, I didn't care for them as much as I, adore so many of the other ones. So, into the rankings. So, obviously, I have all the ones here. As I said, these are the ones I reviewed. So, we have Castle of Cagliostro, Nausicaa, Castle in the Sky, Grave of the Fireflies, Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, Only Yesterday, Porco Rosso, Pompoko, Whisper of the Heart, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, The Cat Returns, Howl's Moving Castle, Tales of Earthsea, Ponyo, The Secret World of Arietti, From Up on Poppy Hill, Princess Kaguya, The Wind Rises, When Marnie Was There, so many names. When Marnie Was There, Earwig and the Witch, and the most recent one, The Boy and the Heron. So, time to rank them. So, first up, we have Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro. Now, I believe I said this in the review. I have seen, like, the other English dub version of this that is, I would say, less good, but that might just be because I've watched this one A, first, and B, a lot more for like the other dub that they did, because there's like 2 dubs of this one, and there's like 2 dubs of Totoro, My Neighbor Totoro. I don't think there's 2 dubs of any of the other ones. I think there's 2 dubs of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, but for the most part, all of these have just like one English dub, and that was when they were being handled by Disney, and then it shifted over to, I think, G Kids or something like that. But for The Castle of Cagliostro, I love the movie, and even if you don't know who like Lupin the Third is necessarily, it's explained pretty quickly that he's a thief and everything. And then of course we have, just like the fun, it is kind of like a heist movie and stuff like that. There's, espionage and international conspiracies going on and everything. I would put that in B tier. Again, I like the design of the movie is fun. And while it is technically not a Studio Ghibli movie, it is a Hayao Miyazaki movie because he was the director of it. And it was one of his first, directorial debuts. Next up, we have Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which is automatically going to go into A. I don't need to do a huge amount of discussion on that one. I adore this movie. I adore the premise of it and the message of it in regards to trying to coexist with nature and with, trying to, like, fix the frickin' messed up things we've done to the environment over the years. So there's that. There's not too much else there in regards to that. I mean, like, I adore the fact that it's, like, Patrick Stewart is in it, and, I love the voice casting in the movie. I love the voice casting for the majority of the movies. So it's, like, it's just, I just love Nausicaa. The art style is gorgeous. It is this, like, it's this delving into science fiction, which I love, which is another reason why I just love Castle in the Sky. And again, these are the very early ones, like Nausicaa and Castle in the Sky. I think Castle in the Sky is like actually, I think the first one that was officially made under the Studio Ghibli name. But it's like, they're amazing, so I'm not that concerned about them. In regards to, like, I love how they're done, how they're drawn and animated and everything like that. Just like these beautiful, fantastical worlds that they develop that, like, you know, that aren't based off of really anything. They're just, Miyazaki dreamt up these worlds, and I love it. And they did such a good job. And like some of the directors or animation directors that worked on some of the scenes in the movies ended up doing other really big movies later on, that like coincided with other Studio Ghibli movies. So it's just like, you know, it's this great, you know, training ground for animators and stuff like that. Next up, we have Grave of the Fireflies, which, oh god. So, Grave of the Fireflies is like one of the ones in this is the main one that like will just literally like, here are your heartstrings. Now, just like, it's not tugging on them, it is like jerking on them and jerking you around. In regards to everything that happens in this movie. And yes, it is semi-autobiographical, based off of a book about, you know, the author. It's about the author's life and everything that he went through. And it's just, oh god, just like, how it's how it realistically depicts all of the horrors of war, which, I mean, like, you know, other movies I've watched do this. There's stuff in other Studio Ghibli movies that are like very much obviously depicting like the horrors of war in some shape or form. And this is one of the ones that like very much goes, you know, doesn't like shy away from much of it. I mean, like by the end of it, the two main characters are dead and all of that. I mean, well, technically at the beginning of it, they're both dead, and then the rest of it is just like a big flashback, basically. And all of that. So it's like, there's a lot there. But that one definitely goes in A tier. As I said, a majority of these are going to be an A and B, and most of them are probably going to be an A. None of them are going to be down here in D or F. Next up, My Neighbor Totoro. And again, this is just like how much I love these movies. And My Neighbor Totoro is going to go here. Grave of the Fireflies might be like the lowest one in the A tier, but it's still like, oh god. But My Neighbor Totoro, I just, you know, I adore Totoro. I love that I can show this movie to my nieces and nephew, or I could when they were younger, and it wasn't like super scary for them. You know, it's just fun. It is, you know, the two little girls going on a little adventure and everything else, and you know, they're just adorable, and I love that. Again, voice acting is great. In the English dub, you've got, you know, Dakota Fanning and Elle Fanning are in it, and they've both gone on to do so many other things. One of them is a Disney princess because Elle Fanning is Aurora in the two Maleficent live action movies, so she's gone on to be a Disney princess, which is just fun. So there's that. Next up, we have Kiki's Delivery Service, which I like just like a smidge more than Totoro. And that's nothing against Totoro. It's just, again, I love these movies so much. And like, it's really hard for me to figure out which ones of these are my favorites, because like a lot of them have different reasons for why I like them. Like Kiki is like taking place in, you know, like our world, but there's like the bits of fantastical with the fact that she's a witch and her cat talks and she can kind of communicate with other animals a little bit because of Gigi and all that other stuff, and it's just fun. And just like all the casting in the movie is fun, and I love that. And just like the animation, which I say the animation is amazing on like, is probably going to be said about most of these movies, actually all of the movies, just in regards to like technically what they achieve. So yeah, Kiki's Delivery Service. Next up is Only Yesterday, which is going to go into the B tier. Which is, again, nothing against the story, nothing against the animation. I love both of those things and the storyline. I don't like it quite as much as I like the other ones. And it's not because it's not a fantastical nature to it, because like Castle of Cagliostro doesn't really have like a fantastical aspect to it, beyond the fact that it takes place in a castle. But it's just, I haven't had this one with me as long as I have some of the other ones. Like only yesterday, I haven't had with me as long as I've had some of the other ones. Because it only got dubbed, I think, in like the last 10 years, if not a little bit less than that, compared to like when it came out to when it was dubbed. And I think there's still, because I don't think the Ocean Waves is, I think, one of the other ones that hasn't been dubbed into English, and like so, and I just haven't seen it yet. Again, I also haven't seen like My Neighbors, the Yamadas and stuff. I just haven't seen those ones yet, just because they just don't seem to interest me all that much. Again, they're not on the list, so I'm not going to rank them. Next up, we have Porco Rosso, and he goes up here into A tier because, again, it's it's a pig flying an airplane. And I love that, it's the same thing I can say about so many of these. I love the animation, and I love the story, and I love just like all of like the gorgeous scenery that comes out of it. Most of the Studio Ghibli movies, there are scenes in these movies that like you could just like pause it and get like a still frame of it and like hang it on your wall for how gorgeous so many of these are. And I mean, like I said the same thing about like a lot of the Disney movies and stuff like that as well, for just like you can frame these still frames and put them on your wall, and it looks like a gorgeous piece of artwork of like a landscape or a skyscape or something. And like the same thing is said about this. Same thing can be said about DreamWorks and other non-Disney animated movies and stuff like that. But Studio Ghibli just has this knack for being able to have these gorgeous landscapes. And it's just setting up the scenes for like the areas, for the environments where these movies are going to take place. And with Porco Rosso, it's these beautiful flying sequences, and like even like the dog fights between the airplanes that are just so great, and just like watching as the different the different airplane thugs and gangs fight against each other and fight against Porco and everything like that. So that's just fun as well. Next up, Pompoko. Yeah, let's do a movie about shape-shifting raccoons, or tanuki, which is just fun. I would say this one might be, no, I would put this in B tier, and I love the whole story. It doesn't make it a bad movie or anything along those lines. I don't know why I feel like I have to defend why I put that in that tier. It's my ranking. Other people's rankings would probably put like every single Studio Ghibli movie ever made into the A tier. And that is fine if that's what you want to do. These are just my rankings. But Pompoko is, like, I love all the shape-shifting raccoons are adorable and hilarious, and just, I love the fact of, like, the raccoons fighting against the humans to try to get their forest back, which is just funny. So there's that, which is just funny. Next up, we have Whisper of the Heart, which is going to go into into B tier as well. Again, I love Whisper of the Heart. I love that it's like, it is supposedly, it is pretty much this mundane story about this girl trying to figure out what she wants to be, and she tries her hand at writing. And, she writes the story inspired by the Baron, that is, the cat figurine that she finds in this antique shop. And she writes the story about it. And, the whole concept of the movie, and of course this is, stuff that she learns from, the grandfather, is that you don't have to have everything be perfect on the first try. That you aren't always going to have, as it's, what is it that he says? He's like, your story was very good. While it does need work, there are gems inside of it that are just gems that you need to find and polish those ones to then work on the framework around the gems. And why he gives her, like the prism stone to remind her of the fact that, there's lots of uncut gems in here, and while you may not be able to get much off of some of them, there are a lot of them in there that once polished up can be very valuable. And that is kind of like it is kind of this like encouraging thing when it comes to, trying to figure out what your life's inspiration is going to be. Do you want to be a writer? Do you want to be a musician? Do you want to be a painter or a sculptor or some other form of artistry? Do you want to be an animator or a director for movies or for TV shows? Do you want to be an actor? Do you want to be a chef? It's like you have, it's this concept of like having to find your way through the parts that aren't the best to get your way to finding the parts of your life, of your talent, that can be polished into these gems that you can use to show off what you are capable of. And I love how they do that in the movie. And, just like the cute little romance between the two characters is also good. Next up, Princess Mononoke, which is going to go right up. Come here. There we go. Right up into A tier. Again, it is this concept of nature fighting back against the humans. It does have like a historical context in how it's, being done in Japan and everything like that. And, ancient Japan for this, these wars between, different feudal clans going on, and for resources and everything, plus against nature in and of itself. And there's, the forest spirit and everything like that. And there's, of course, Ishitaka, who is trying to make things better, trying to see the world with eyes unclouded by hate and everything like that, which is a very noble thing to be able to do, or to try to do, because, in this day and age, and even, back in the late 90s when this movie was made, it is very much this concept of, like, it is very hard to not have hate within your mind when you are looking at the world today, simply because of the fact that, so many of these, so much of our lives is dedicated to, othering people, to, oh, they're not like us, or they hurt us, or these two groups are fighting against each other, and they have been for so long. I mean, like, just look at the world today. There's politics, there's religion, there's war, there's so many other things that just, like, divide people up. There's race and ethnicity and cultural backgrounds and, the borders of countries, and so many things when it comes to, gender and, sexuality and everything like that, and economic divides that can cause different types of hate in the world one way or another. And Ishitaka is like, I've come to try to see the world with eyes unclouded by hate. And that is a lesson that I think a lot more people in this world need to try to take, need to try to understand. And maybe someday we will get more people that understand that concept. And I try to do that, but it's like there's always going to be people out in the world who have done horrible things, and, maybe not to me directly, but to other people that I am aware of. And it would be very hard for me to not hate this person, or people that have done something against my country or other countries that is just horrible. And, that leads down the path of hate. Next up, on a slightly lighter note, we have Spirited Away, which, for the fact that, I have this connection with this movie, and my now 21-year-old niece, who just turned 21 in in August, that I was watching this movie on the day she was born. To be fair, it was not the first time I'd seen the movie, but I was watching the movie on the day she was born, and now, almost 21 years later, it ended up being I watched it with her for the first time, when I could have sworn I showed it to her at some other point in time, but she may not have remembered it. But so for personal reasons, it gets a bump. Also, I adore this movie. I say that about so many of the Studio Ghibli movies, even the ones that are the B tier. I still love watching them. It's like when I did the Disney animated movie rankings, it's like, when you're for Pixar, it's like, yeah, Cars 2 is like my least favorite Pixar movie, but I'll still watch it. I'll still enjoy watching it. It's not like I hate the movie. Same thing is going to be said about some of these other movies where it's just like, yeah, they're lower on the list, but that doesn't mean that I won't watch them. But Spirited Away, again, I adore the voice casting in it because it's, the little girl who plays Lilo and Stitch is in it as Chihiro. And, they did such a good job on so many of the other voice casting and everything. And I adore, the world that, Miyazaki created in the movie and everything. And just the storyline behind it for, like, how powerful love can be for, Chihiro saving Haku and everything like that, and helping him find out who he was again, and her saving her parents and everything. And maybe in her own little ways making the bathhouse just a tiny bit better for the people who live there. And how she goes from being this, like, outcast in the movie via the spirits not wanting her there, to at the end of the movie they're all cheering for her and hoping that she's able to pick the right pigs that aren't her parents and everything, and figure out Zeniba's trick and everything, like Yubaba's trick, figure out Yubaba's trick and everything. And I love that concept and everything. And so there's that. And so I adore I adore Spirited Away. Next we have The Cat Returns, which is going to go here because, as again, I adore the voice casting. I love the fact that it's Carrie Ellis and Anne Hathaway in the movie, and Tim Curry, and I love that. How it's just that fun bit. How there's so much going on there. I love the fact that it's this girl that's like, maybe it would be better to be a cat, and then she gets turned into a cat, and she's like, no, I don't want this. Take me home now. And all of that setup there that happens with Haru and the Baron. And I love that the meta idea for it is that the story for The Cat Returns is being written by the girl from Whisper of the Heart. They're like, this is now the story that she ends up writing after she's gone through and, like, polished her gems and made it better. And, like, now this is the story that she's writing years later once she's grown up and an author herself. So I like that meta idea in it. For, like, bringing the Baron back and how you can do it that way. So I love that, and how it is, like, kind of like the closest thing to a true sequel that Studio Ghibli has. Because, like, Studio Ghibli does not do sequels, which is fair. I'm not saying they have to, but, like, The Cat Returns is, like, the closest thing to a sequel that they will ever have, probably. And I love the design of the world of cats and all of that stuff, so that's fun, too. And then we have Howl's Moving Castle, which I'm pretty sure... Yeah, Howl's Moving Castle is probably just my favorite Studio Ghibli movie. There's adventure, there's romance, there's Christian Bale trying to be emo, there's Billy Crystal as talking fire, which is just awesome. I love that. So that's just, I love that they did that. I love that so much. Again, and Howl's Moving Castle is one of the movies that is based off of an actual book of the same name. And then, like, there were talks of doing sequels with the other books, of adapting the other books into other Studio Ghibli movies, which I would have been perfectly fine with, but that didn't happen. But that would have been one way maybe that we got some more, got another set of, like a sequel possibly. Probably wouldn't have been like a full franchise of the movies, but at least maybe like adapting the second or the third and the third books, give or take. But that's okay. Again, I love the whole concept. Girl that gets turned into an old woman, and she has to find her own self-confidence in order to counteract the spell and try to break it and everything. And by the end of the movie, she does, and she's figured out where her confidence comes from, and she is so much better, and she helps the man that she has fallen in love with, and she builds her own little found family with Hal and Markle and Calcifer and, the Witch of the Waste, and with Heen, with the dog and everything like that. So she's able to do all of that. They stop a war from happening, or they stop a war between the two kingdoms. I love how they do that in the movie. And how Hal goes from being this very vain person to, now he has to learn what it is like to have a heart, and to fully be connected to your heart. So there's that. And then we have Tales of Earthsea, which is one of the ones that's going to go into sea. Again, the animation is beautifully done, but there's certain story plots and plot holes in the movie that just don't quite add up very well. And of course, this is, the Tales of Earthsea is adapting it off of a book and everything like that. There's been multiple versions of this story in an attempt to try to tell it in various different media settings. I know that there's at least one that is live action series that they did that I think has Morgan Freeman in it. But there's not too much else there. I know there's other variations that have tried to make it. And again, the animation is fine, and I don't mind the storyline, but there's just certain points in the movie that are just this just seems like a glaring plot hole that could have been easily fixed with just having the character pick something else to do at the same time. But it's based off of a story, and it is an adaptation of a story trying to compress it down. Same thing can be said about a lot of other stuff. And then we have Ponyo, which is going to go up here into B tier. Again, it is kind of this take on The Little Mermaid with, the little girl, the little fish that falls in love with a human. And again, it's just funny. I love Liam Neeson as Ponyo's dad, and Tina Fey as Sasuke's mom. I love that connection there. I love the fact that it's that Ponyo and Sasuke are voiced by essentially let's get Miley Cyrus's little sister to voice Ponyo and the Jonas Brothers' youngest brother to voice Sasuke. And I love that, and it works perfectly. It works perfectly, and I love that. And I love that it's they have all the old ladies, and they all got old lady actresses to come in and play them, which is adorable. And we get Lily Tomlin and such in a Studio Ghibli movie, and Betty White in it and everything. And I love that. And I love just the world that gets created around them and everything, and showing the community working together and taking care of their own. After the flood part happens and everything. So I love that. And, Ponyo having to go through the choice of choosing to have magic or be a human, and how she can't be both, and how she, chooses to be human and everything. That whole choice that's done there. And all of that. So I love that. I also love the idea of just this concept of years down the line of Ponyo's dad still spying on her and Sasuke when they're walking to school, even though she's all grown up, and that she still would have, hopefully she would still have, the ability to go and talk to her father or talk to her mother and stuff like that, or see her little sisters and everything. So we'll see what happens. There's never going to be a sequel to it, but that's just my headcanon of what happened. Next up we have Arrietty, which is going to go end of A tier. And actually, one second, let's move. I gotta do a slight rearrange here. There we go. For where to put Arrietty. So I love that, again, I love the world that it's made. I love the fact that the good chunk of the movie is the sets are literally the size of a shoebox. for where Arrietty and her parents live. And then, of course, the whole scale of, like, how huge everything else is in comparison to them. For how big, Sean is, for how big the cat is, for how big the house as a whole is, for, all of this other stuff, and how it's it's like how Arrietty and her family of borrowers live inside of this, in this very nice house, and that within the house, the people who have lived there over the years, the family who have lived there, believed in the borrowers, believed that they were, real, and wanted to, be nice to them, barring, the maid, who is Carol Burnett, and that just made me so happy when she's like, yay, she's in a Studio Ghibli movie, I love that. Also, the whole reason for me to do this is just for me to have, like, one last little time to gush about these movies, gush over these movies and everything like that. Just be like, I love them, because I do, so much, so much, and my niece has seen Howl's Moving Castle now, and I need to show her and some of the other ones, so they have the chance to be more exposed to them. Not that they're not exposed to anime and everything like that, but, just to show them some of these other ones. From there, we have From Up on Poppy Hill, which, again, it is this mundane world where there's not really any magic happening in the world. It is this post, end of the Korean War type of thing with this girl growing up. She doesn't have her father anymore, but she still has her mother, and her siblings live with their grandmother, and she takes so many responsibilities on in regards to taking care of all of their boarders and taking care of her brother and sister and her grandmother and running the house and everything like that, plus going to school. And then, during the whole thing, and then, they, her and her friends end up, befriending the guys who, want to clean up the clubhouse and end up helping them. And then you have the soap opera drama going on in the background with, her and the guys she likes just, thinking that they're actually half siblings for, like, a good chunk of the movie. And then they find out at the end of it that, no, you're not actually half siblings. It's fine. Your fathers were just best friends. And all of that stuff. And stuff happened, and it's fine that you two are in love with each other. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. For, like, how that gets resolved and everything. But then, like, there's also the whole thing of, she has to figure out the fact that she doesn't have to carry the weight of the whole world on her shoulders alone. And there's also the moments where her sister starts to step up, and the sister starts to help more and is like, okay, yeah, I can help more around the house. I don't have to let you do everything and stuff like that. And even, the grandmother is, a little bit more like, go and have fun at times. And everything, and and I love that concept that gets done there. Next up, actually, give me 1 second. Next up, we have Princess Kaguya, and this is one of the ones that I love the animation of the story of, like, how the film is made, and I know that it is based off of, a myth, of, like, an ancient tale and everything like that from Japan. But it is one where I do enjoy it. I just have a harder time connecting to it than I do when it comes to a lot of the other Studio Ghibli movies. Again, nothing against the actors, nothing against the director, nothing against the art design or the story. I just have a slightly harder time connecting to it. I don't know why. I just do. I still adore the movie, and I still love watching it, but it is just one where it's just like, okay, it's a little bit more of a, am I in the mood for this one? And sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm not. It just depends on the circumstances. It also just depends on how long I have to watch it, because The Princess Kaguya is one of the longer Studio Ghibli movies. I don't remember which one's the longest, but I think that one's got one of the longest run times out of it, because I think it's over 2 hours long. The Boy and the Heron is pretty long too, but I don't remember exactly which one is the longest out of all of the Studio Ghibli movies. And again, it's like for Princess Kaguya, I still love the animation and the character design and how it's based off of like, the painting styles and stuff like that for the scrolls and how they animate that and everything. And I love that. Next up, The Wind Rises, which was like one of the, I don't remember what was supposed to be studio, like, I don't remember what was the first time Miyazaki retired, but I know that, like, The Wind Rises was, like, one of the other times he supposedly retired, because he made that, and he was like, yeah, this is going to be my last movie. And then, of course, we also still have now The Boy and the Heron that just came out, and, that came out last year, and it's just like, now this is my last movie. I'm like, okay. Your last movie will be something that comes out after you die, because you'll still work on stuff. Probably. Go spend time with your kids and your grandkids if you have any. So, The Wind Rises. Yeah. I put that about there in A tier. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're going to slide that over there. There we go. Just slight adjustments in regards to, my personal preferences for that. The Wind Rises, again, it's one of the ones that is kind of, autobiographical. And it's about, the man who designed the planes that flew and attacked Pearl Harbor. But he did a lot more than that. It is showing, humanizing this man who did all of that stuff. And also just, kind of putting that concept of, like, it's not his fault, is part of, like, the story, but it's also, like, you get to see him be, him be with his, be around his family and be around his friends and be around the woman that he loves and all of that stuff and all this journey through his life and how he wanted to fly, but he, wanted to design airplanes and all of this other stuff that happened. So I just, like, I the movie does such a good job of that. And again, it's the beautiful flying sequences and, like, the technical talk and discussion of, like, how you build a frickin' airplane in some cases, how you design an airplane and what goes into that and everything. And touches on things about, other things about World War I and, a bunch of that stuff. About World War II and everything. So there's, like, a lot of that stuff that gets drawn into there. And, and the human side of things in regards to, like, his wife having tuberculosis and, again, it is a bit more, fantastical at times with, like, the dream sequences, but it's also a little bit, it is very much rooted, grounded in, like, how, things that would have happened in his life or that could have happened in his life, interactions he could have had and things like that. And not 100% glossing over everything. There's a few bits here and there that get glossed over with time, but, with a little bit. But for the most part, it does kind of stick to, the reality of things. Next up, we have When Marnie Was There. I think there, yeah. Again, When Marnie Was There. I don't think... Was this based off of a book? I don't remember. I don't think this was based off of a book, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I know there's a couple that are based off of books, like, House Moving Castle is based off of a book, My Neighbor Totoro, or not My Neighbor Totoro, Grave of the Fireflies is based off of a book. The Arrietty is based off of The Borrowers. The Boy and the Heron is based off of a book. Castle of Cagliostro is, of course, based off of another anime entirely. Because it's part of that franchise. Ponyo is based off of The Little Mermaid. Pompoko is based off of, the concept of the shape-shifting raccoons. But I don't think when Martin was there is based off of anything in particular. So there's that. Again, it is this world that they dreamt up. That it is, I mean, it's like, it is like the real world, but then it like cuts back and forth and it shows types of abuse and it shows people struggling with it and making their way out of it. And, you know, the girl finding her family and everything like that, and finding friends and finding out her own history and who she is and everything like that. And all of that other stuff that she goes through throughout the course of the movie. And, you know, finding out that she's not worthless kind of the way that she thought she was, even though she was, you know, orphaned and adopted and everything like that. And how she just has all of those worries, and how she's able to come to terms with who she is and who's around her and become happier in that sense, and while also kind of like allowing her to, via hallucinations and dreams, basically, interact with the ghost of her own grandmother who raised her for a little while and told her these stories, and they were subconsciously there. And then she got to experience them when she, you know, got to her, you know, where she was for the summer and everything. And, you know, and she just gets, you know, she gets better. And I mean, it's not like a miracle thing, because she's probably still going to have to struggle with some of that stuff for the rest of her life, but she's kind of able to help her grandmother's ghost to a degree finally rest in peace after helping her granddaughter learn her own history and become, you know, I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. It is a hard movie to explain, because like I've tried to explain it to people before after they've watched it, and I'm like, okay. Here's what happened. And it's like kind of hard to explain. I do a better explanation in the review itself. Next up, we have Earwig and the Witch, which is just going to go right into C. Again, not a bad movie. It's kind of Ghibli's first foray into a full computer animation movie. And for that, I don't think it's a bad job. I have nothing against the animation. I mean, given the fact of, you know, how, you know, much I'm used to the Studio Ghibli movies being like that hand-drawn animation style. Earwig and the Witch is a little bit of like, oh, well, that's different. Which isn't a bad thing. I still like the story. The music in it is fine. The animation is good. I just, you know, don't have as much, you know, I don't like it as much as I like the other movies. Again, I still will watch it, but it's not one that I'm like, oh, I'm going to go out of my way to go watch that. It's like, sure, we'll watch that. You know, again, it's like bits in the movie that, you know, plot holes are a bit large in various points when it comes to the movie, but, you know, whatever. And admittedly, when I first saw this movie when it came out, I didn't realize it was a Studio Ghibli movie. When I first saw it, you know, come out, when I first found it at the store, I didn't realize that it was a Studio Ghibli movie until later, and I'm like, oh, wait, that's Studio Ghibli? Huh. Well, I'll watch it someday. Someday is when I'm reviewing them. And then we have The Boy and the Heron. Here we go. Into A tier. So, The Boy and the Heron, I think, I mean, like, studio, you know, Miyazaki comes out of retirement. If he does it again in, like, another 10 years, I also don't know how old he is, but whatever. If he comes out of retirement again in another, like, 5-10 years and does another movie, sure. But if not, I'd say The Boy and the Heron is another very good one for him to leave as one of his last bits of legacy. To the world of animation and storytelling, and just to the world in general. And movies, regardless of animation, in general. So there's that. I love the story that it's about grief and overcoming that, and learning that, you know, again, it's like it's Mahito finding who he is, and even the heron kind of learning that he can trust other people. He can trust Mahito, and, you know, all this stuff, and, you know, Mahito saving his, you know, his stepmother, who will be his mother, and, you know, getting to kind of have, like, this bit where he does get to say goodbye to his own mother, and, you know, this concept of, like, you know, what about this, you know, comparing the world that's within the tower of this world that is like these pieces stacked on top of each other that don't always work together, or that clearly don't work together, compared to outside of the real world where maybe a difference could be made. And, you know, my thought is just like, maybe Mahito grows up and maybe he ends up trying to help make a difference in the world down the line. Yeah, becomes a politician or something like that, where he tries to make things better as best he can. And I love the meta joke of it being that the same guy that plays the dad that plays Hal in both the English and the Japanese dubs, for being, you know, Christian Bale in the English dub, play Mahito's dad in The Boy in the Heron. I love that joke. He's like, yeah, Christian Bale, you've gone from playing the male lead to the male lead's father, who, to be honest, is still very awesome. Is still a nice guy and everything like that. So it's, you know, it's still a good father. So it's like that type of a joke there. But I believe that would be everything for this. So this would be what I would say is my rankings for the Studio Ghibli movies. I love all of these movies. Some a bit more than others, just because of, you know, how long I've been watching them. With some of these I've been watching since I was a kid. And like other ones as they've, you know, come out over the years, watching them. And, you know, I have memories watching them with my mom or with my dad, or at the hospital for Spirited Away when my niece was born. Trying to watch some of these movies with my niece and, you know, with my nieces and nephew and stuff like that, so they can see these amazing movies. Telling other people about these movies that are, you know, people that I've worked with, and being like, hey, you should watch these movies. They're really good. And stuff, you know, so it's just like, I love being able to do that. And like, if you're not that sure about anime, just go and watch these movies. Just give them a try and see what you think. And go from there. So that's what I have for this. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.